I wasn't accommodated by the firm. They ignored every plea, concern I had about my mental health. And until one day I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't get out of bed for 8 days. I barely opened my eyes.
After 3 months, they turned around to me and said, they don't know how to cope with me, please can I leave? And it was a really hard pill for me to swallow because I'd never experienced discrimination based on my disability. In fact, because of how I grew up, I didn't ever really see myself as being disabled. And it was the first time that I feel like my eyes were opened and I realized I'm going to struggle. I never knew that I was going to struggle.
When I say I'm overloaded, I'm not being a child. I'm not being intolerant of everybody. I am overloaded. I am struggling. I'm not having a tantrum. I'm not being fussy or being difficult.
What do you see when you see this man?
Hi.
I see someone who's smart and kind. He works hard and he has integrity, but people often misunderstand him. He agreed to be interviewed to help others, but he just couldn't do it.
This is too much.
He wasn't being difficult or dramatic. Nico is autistic. Now imagine his boss asking him to do something at work that made him feel like this. Something that wasn't really part of his job and that someone else could easily handle. Does that seem fair to you? What if bright lights gave him headaches, or the smell of a colleague's lunch made him feel sick? What if he kept asking to get his tasks in writing, because that's what helps him do his best work, but no one listened? Accommodating someone like Nico isn't about giving special treatment or lowering the bar. It's about understanding how he experiences the world and meeting him where he's at, so that he can thrive. That's what true inclusion looks like.
I eventually worked my way to a business analyst role and discovered that that is very people intensive and that's not actually my best thing. So that's been a bit of a challenge, especially in larger companies where there's all the open plan offices, all the lights and the sounds and the smells and the people. It's very, very challenging for someone with my sensory profile.
I'm an aircraft engineer. I've also in the past worked in design where I've designed systems as well as lectured for international companies on various systems of the aircraft.
Did your company agree to accommodate you?
Well, when I said I need a remote-only position and because I'm autistic and these are the things, the issues I face, no problem whatsoever, happy to have you aboard. And then the minute it didn't suit them because the clients didn't want remote-only people or business analysts in particular, then it was a problem. I was treated like a problem. Everything I raised was framed as, oh, but you won't come into the office, so we can't help you. Like I was deliberately being difficult instead of raising valid issues that they did promise to support.
When I looked for participants to interview, I wanted to include people from different races and cultures so that we could hear stories from a wide range of voices that reflect who we are as a nation. I wasn't able to get any people of color to commit to an interview, and there are likely many reasons for this. There is still a stigma around autism. When you add factors like financial barriers, racial discrimination in the workplace, and social pressures, it can make the decision to be interviewed overwhelming. Added to that, getting a diagnosis just isn't accessible to many South Africans.
I'm an aircraft engineer for about 20 plus years. Started as an apprentice, worked my way up through the system. I then left the industry altogether after some conflicts And I started coming back in on a freelance basis, and eventually it turned back to full-time, and I returned back to the company that I originally started with. I've been with this company for 22 years, but with a couple of breaks in between as I've moved around, but I keep returning.
A lot of the issues I had with the people, I was very bullied a lot of the time. And I didn't fit in with their buddy, let's be drinking on the weekend, or like after work. And one of the boss liked to tickle people, and I'm very touch averse. And that was a big issue. Like, he didn't like it that I didn't want to be tickled. I mean, hello. Anyway. And no one explained anything, what you're supposed to do, and the weird social hierarchies and things. I kind of ended up speaking to other people and not hanging out with my people because they were strange. Well, I was probably the strange one, but they didn't treat me very nicely. I landed a remote-only contract at one of the country's top employers that claimed to be very inclusive, very supportive. I told them that I was autistic from interview stage, and the moment my remote-only contract didn't suit their client needs, they basically pushed me into a complete mental breakdown, and I've been unemployed since.
How long ago was that?
That was 6 months. 6 months ago.
I think there's so much that I've struggled with when it comes to accessing work and employment, and it's probably why I've jumped from job to job so much. When I was younger, I've done everything from waitressing to being a PA, au pairing. I was a professional performer, so I did theatre productions and singing, and I've done all of that. And then what I consider to be my professional work history, I was a teacher for a couple of years, and then just before I got married, my husband was a pastor and he asked me to join ministry with him. So I worked in ministry with him for a couple of years, and then I said to him, my passion is disabilities, disability rights, I need to go back into that.
And now I use technology to empower primarily the deaf community.
So far, in terms of degrees, I have a teaching licentiate for speech and drama. I have my honours in, it's called PVA, which is Performance and Visual Arts, where I majored in drama therapy and musical theatre. I have my honours in South African Sign Language, and recently I've completed my master's in law in disability rights for Africa. The goal is to get a PhD.
I believe I was 32 when I got my initial diagnosis.
And what led you to believe that you might be autistic?
Actually, it was COVID. We all had to stay at home and everyone else was freaking out, and I was just like, what are you guys on about? This is fantastic. I don't have to leave my house. So that set a whole big thought process going. I made a throwaway comment to my mom, and she said to me, I actually have thought that you might be on the spectrum for quite a while. I just didn't know how to bring it up with you. Yeah. Turns out she is too, but it's another story.
I was 35 when I was diagnosed. We picked up issues with my daughter, and when going through the process with the psychiatrist with my daughter, the psychiatrist recommended I go for assessment myself, and they confirmed the diagnosis of Asperger's autism.
At the beginning of this project, I was 100% convinced that I would find companies who have a policy on autism in the workplace and who support their autistic employees. I contacted more than 16 different companies in different spheres of corporate South Africa. Many of the companies that I contacted have their diversity and inclusion policies available online for everyone to read. But yet, when I wanted to conduct a friendly interview to hear how they support their employees, they were just not available to do it. I think I was a little naive because I believed that autistic people really did get the support that they needed in the workplace, and that I just needed to go and find evidence of that. But unfortunately, that is not what I found. Now, if this is what it's like just to get the companies to talk to me, imagine what it must be like to be an autistic employee working for one of those companies.
I think it's important for us to remember that autistic children turn into autistic adults. And just statistically, because your childhood years are shorter than your adult years, there's more autistic adults out there. It's not a childhood condition. It's a lifelong condition.
So I was 9 years old when I was diagnosed. I was living overseas in Dubai. I grew up traveling the world, and we landed in Dubai, and they were amazing educational specialists, and they had a disability unit in the school that I was at. They were kids with all different types of disabilities, all different cultures, religions. It was such an amazing environment, and I think that that's why a big part of me believes in inclusion, was because of that, the formative years of my life being in a school like that. And then halfway through high school, my dad's job dictated we moved. So we moved back to South Africa, and I realized that this idea of inclusion and inclusive education was not everywhere in the world. So we were really privileged to be able to go to one of the top private schools in South Africa, and after 3 months they turned around to me and said, they don't know how to cope with me, please can I leave? And it was a really hard pill for me to swallow, because I'd never experienced discrimination based on my disability. In fact, because of how I grew up, I didn't ever really see myself as being disabled. And it was the first time that I feel like my eyes were opened and I realized I'm going to struggle. I never knew that I was going to struggle.
Before I was diagnosed, the biggest issues was the sensory overload. A lot of noise, a lot of light, a lot of environmental, and I didn't understand why, and nor did my colleagues. They just thought I was intolerant. A lot of noise, or somebody's banging on the plane, or they're riveting, and they can't understand why I'm getting agitated. And I don't know why I'm getting agitated if it seems not to be affecting anybody else. After diagnosis, it's okay, now I understand. And when I explain it to people, some people accept it and they try to help me around it, others don't.
During COVID, your company allowed you to work from home. What was that like?
Yes, I loved it. I learned how to crochet during boring meetings. I could let my ADHD run free. I could fidget as much as I wanted to. I didn't have to be this perfect, happy, shiny person with a mask on all the time, as one usually does have to be in corporate. It was so incredibly liberating because I didn't have to get up and wear uncomfortable clothes and leave the house and endure the sensory assault that is the world for the first time since I was a very small child.
How did that affect your productivity?
Incredibly well. My manager at the time actually advocated for me to have the remote-only position because I did so much better and I was less needy for her to have to deal with because I had so fewer issues.
The main thing for me has been socializing. In today's day and age, there's a big focus on culture and socializing, and we're a family. And that was really difficult for me to navigate because I don't see work like that. I have a very close relationship with my family, and they are my family. And workplace, to try bring this idea in was very, it was something that I really, really battled with. So environments where that culture was put on was something that I didn't cope with. I'm not somebody who wants to go get breakfast with you in the morning. I suck at small talk, and I will forget. If you tell me something personal, I will forget. And it's not personal that I forgot. It's just my brain is overloaded with so much information to remember a lot of small detail. It's something I struggle with, and then people take that as being rude and not trying to be rude. So I've had a lot of challenges trying to navigate that. I also am somebody who's completely black and white. So if you tell me the rules are X, Y, and Z, I will stick to those rules, and I battle if somebody breaks those rules, especially if it's the person who told me about that rule. And then I go into mental, spiraling out of control. And then also something that I really battle with is I'm quite straightforward. I don't beat around the bush. And again, people can take that as rude.
It's a lot of energy to navigate this world, to make sure that, am I making the right eye contact? Am I giving this right body language? Am I using the right tone of voice? Am I using the right facial expressions? What does this person's facial expressions mean? And trying to keep that up 24/7 all of the time in the workplace can really lead to burnout for a lot of autistic people.
I know myself, I struggle with emotion. I can't pick up on emotion on other people. I can't pick up on subtleties. Sarcasm, if I'm busy with something, sarcasm goes straight over my head. I take things very literally. The guys will pick on it occasionally. They'll see if I'm busy and they'll joke around or they'll be sarcastic, and I'll take them seriously. They'll come with a weird question or a weird request, and before thinking, I will roll with it. And it's an annoyance more than anything else.
I was put on a client that I'd previously been put on that didn't work out. The managers there, I believe, gave upper management the impression that I had a bit of an anxiety issue instead of, autism with all the needs and supports I had and still have, rather than, so they basically made me out to be a drama queen. All of my reluctance to go back to that client was ignored. Through every channel they had, I said, I have concerns about my mental health. This project is bad for my mental health. I got ignored, I got dismissed. I wasn't allowed to roll off the clients. I was given no opportunity to work internally, even though I practically begged because they come into the office too. Until one day I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't get out of bed for 8 days. I barely opened my eyes. I lost a great deal of my vision for a good 3-4 months. I struggled to walk initially. My diet changed completely. I probably weighed 30-40 kilos more, and I lost it all in about 6 weeks. My sensory sensitivities haven't recovered. They're way stronger than they were just because of all the stress and trauma. It's basically made me pretty much unable to work for the moment, and I've got a lot of recovery still to go after 6 months in.
I requested some accommodations, such as being moved off the hangar floor into an office for the admin purposes. Obviously, my main work will still be on the hangar floor, but at least with an office, I have a quiet space when I need to. When I need to sit down and focus on paperwork, I can sit down without distraction. The other accommodation was slight flexibility of time, both for myself and to assist with my children. And during the hard lockdown of COVID, that was accepted. And I saw what a difference that made to both myself and my children. And then coming out of the lockdown, they decided that that accommodation is no longer practical. I need to go back to the standard 8 to 5 like everybody else. And I had no other option to accommodate my children other than to leave and go on a freelance basis where I could control my time.
South African legislation is widely known to be one of the most progressive legislation in terms of fighting for the rights of equality for individuals. And it's amazing on paper when we read it. We should have no discrimination in this country. And yet, 98.9%, and this was a statistic that was released last year by the United Nations, 98.9% of people with disabilities in South Africa are unemployed. It's scary when you read that statistic. And you can see our legislation, no person may be discriminated against based on their disability. And yet people are struggling to access not only their right to employment, but their right to education, their right to privacy, there's so many rights that people with disabilities in this country are being discriminated against on a daily basis. So legislation, fantastic. Implementation is where we're really, really lacking.
What could your company have done to accommodate you?
They could have told me honestly that it was the remote only position wasn't working out for them and given me options. Barring that, they could have let me work internally and stayed at home completely. But they insisted on pushing me on clients, even though it was a client that they knew didn't suit me, because they were the only client that would accept remote BAs and they wouldn't listen.
socially is the biggest issue, because I'm okay in a group of 2 or 3 people, or if I'm out on a hike, if I'm leading a hike or a mountain trip and I've got 10 or 15 people, I'm still in control of the situation. I'm comfortable. Going home in the evenings, often I'll get home, kids are screaming, kids are shouting, the wife wants something done, this needs to be done in the house. I'm already overloaded from the day, and it's like, people, please leave me alone. I'll go be quiet for an hour or so, close the door, my headphones on, and I'm okay. So the family that does accommodate, they do understand, especially with the fact that both my children are autistic as well. In my household, my wife is the odd man out.
It's really important that people without disabilities do not speak on behalf of people with disabilities. And a couple of months ago, I was at a conference and there was a government official who stood up on stage and said, "We're still fighting for a cure for autism." And everything inside of me broke, because they were speaking to an audience of individuals without disabilities that were working with people with disabilities. And it was such a challenge for me, because I'm a person with autism and there's nothing wrong with me. I don't want to be cured. I don't want to be fixed. I took medication as a child. I don't take medication anymore, because I've learned enough tools to be able to do what I need to do. And I work with people around me constantly educating, I need this support, I need this help. And it's been amazing how people are actually willing to be accommodating when you start to create that awareness and that education around it.
I don't think at the same time we can accept autistic people and try to have autistic people not exist in the world anymore. And we want them to be completely different human beings. I think the idea of curing autism stems from that idea that autism is something external to you. It's not who you are. It's something that went wrong. It's something that's pathologized and we have to fix.
How do you feel about it when you hear people talking about curing autism?
Angry, incredibly angry. There's nothing wrong with us. There's nothing to cure. If we would just be accepted and our needs supported, instead of us being shoved into this little box of what's supposed to be normal, we would be fine. But these people that promote these cures are hurting people. They are hurting children. It's disgusting. Gave myself goosebumps.
I love myself exactly the way that I am. One person that I worked with was a boy who was passionate about gaming, and the mom said to me, he's never going to do anything, all he does is play games. And we ended up getting him a job as a gamer, and he's now earning an income from that. But it's so important to see the strengths, because people with autism don't need to be cured. Why are we trying to kill off an element of neurodiversity? We have different races, different genders, different identities in the world, different cultures. We live in such a beautiful, diverse culture, and neurodiversity is a part of that. So rather trying to fix it and make everybody exactly the same, we should be embracing it and finding our strengths in one another.
What do you want the world to know about autistic people?
That we are different, that we do have slightly different needs, accommodations, but we also want to be a part of you. We want to work with you. We don't want to fight the system. We're not here to be difficult. When I say I'm overloaded, I'm not being a child. I'm not being intolerant of everybody. I am overloaded. I am struggling. I'm not having a tantrum. I'm not being fussy or being difficult.
What does being autistic mean to you?
Autistic is, there's so many medical definitions on autism that it's really difficult to summarize what autism is in general, but autism is, to me, it defines who I am. I don't know, there's no other way that I can really explain that. It defines who I am, it defines everything about my life, every decision I make, everything that I do, everything that I'm passionate about, I fundamentally believe is because of my autism. So for me, it's who I am.
Just being different. It's running Linux in a Windows world. Different operating system. Still all the same, still do all the same things. You just process information a bit differently.
Honestly, it's just part of who I am. It's just the way my brain works. And I have some amazing things. I have an incredible memory. I have incredible pattern recognition. I am capable of so much. I'm so incredibly autistic, as well as autistic. And I don't think there's anything wrong with me. I don't view myself as disordered or disabled. Actually, other people have made me feel that way, but it's really just how my brain's wired, and there's nothing wrong with it.
And everybody talks about autism, it's ASD, autism spectrum disorder. It's a spectrum. And there are individuals that are high support, there are individuals that are low support, and everybody moves within that spectrum based on what's going on in their life. So for myself, a lot of people that meet me, they know me as low support, but there are times where I am higher support needs, where I need a lot of support to be able to process, to be able to think, to be able to act. However, there are individuals whose baseline is of higher support, where they need, on a day-to-day basis, they need more support in different areas of their life. And autism affects different areas, including your communication and your social skills, executive functioning, many areas. So they'll need a little bit more support in areas on a day-to-day basis. Now, workspaces in South Africa are not inclusive and they're not accessible. And if they're not inclusive and accessible to visual disabilities, meaning that you can see that that person has a disability when you meet them, for example, a person in a wheelchair, or a person who's deaf, or a person who's blind using a white cane or a guide dog, immediately you meet that person, you know they've got a disability, and yet workspaces are not accommodating of those disabilities. How much more challenging is it to accommodate for somebody with an invisible disability? You don't know that they have a disability. They might not even disclose their disability, or maybe they do and they're not even 100% sure what accommodations they need because their needs fluctuate on a day-to-day basis. People might just think, oh, you're not autistic, you're just weird, or you're just rude, or we just try and rationalize it the way that we think it is. You're not autistic, you're just lazy, you take too long to reply to emails. And it's not. It's things that we as people with autism struggle with on a daily basis, and we need support. And because of all of this and the misconceptions and the stigmas attached to it, a person with higher support needs is less likely to get a job, or less likely to keep a job, because people just don't understand. There's such a lack of understanding around autism and how to accommodate people with autism.
The only education any of them have had is what I've basically told them. Some people accept it, some people they don't. Some people accommodate, some people say grow up and be an adult.
Have you had a boss that's accommodated you? And how did that affect your work?
I've had two, actually, and they were fantastic. They worked with me. They understood my needs, they listened, they took me seriously, they appreciated what I could do, even though I was a little bit high maintenance sometimes. But that was, they considered it worth it because of what I brought to the team, what I brought to the projects, what I brought to the table. They basically just saw me for who I was, listened to what I needed, helped me as best they could. And small things, like the one guy asked the team to add an extension to their browser where you can turn dark mode on and off. So when they screen shared and I was in the session, they turned to dark mode for me. It was amazing. I ended up with so fewer headaches. And just because I felt heard, because I actually felt appreciated, managed to do so much more and so much better just because my needs were met and I wasn't so totally stressed out on an emotional and sensory level all the time.
They've given me an office. So I share an office with 2 other guys that I work very closely with. So there I've got the freedom to put the radio on, switch the radio off, aircon, and I can isolate myself from the noise. It is very quiet. I don't hear much of the stuff that goes on the hangar floor. Now, typically in this environment, they don't want you wearing headphones. They want you aware of the noise and that around you. But they've realized that without my headphones, I'm less aware because I'm more overloaded. That the headphones actually help. So they overlook the fact that I wear headphones.
Part of not discriminating against people with disabilities in the workplace is providing those reasonable accommodations. And often the reasonable accommodations that autistic people need are quite low cost. A lot of it is more attitudinal and just understanding that autistic person. Also, reasonable accommodations is not a nice to have. Companies have to provide reasonable accommodations.
I have only been open about my diagnosis, specifically with autism, because I have other diagnoses that I've never really thought were bad. But specifically my diagnosis with autism, I've only been open about it for about 4 years. And my reason for that is because I don't think I fully understood it myself. And especially as a woman with autism, it was very hard to relate because media portrayed people with autism like the Good Doctor or Sheldon Cooper from The Big Bang Theory, which are typically a white, cisgender, heterosexual male. They're very intelligent and they're very bizarre. And I didn't identify as that. I didn't connect with that. And I was too scared to say that I was autistic because people would think I'm like that. And because I am clever, I am intellectual, there is that, oh wow, okay, you Sheldon Cooper or you're the Good Doctor, and I'm not. I don't identify as that. And I didn't feel that it was right for me to disclose my diagnosis as a person with autism, because how could I say that I have autism when they're kids that struggle with communication, that can't get into mainstream schools, that are struggling far more than I am, and I don't identify with them either. It was only later on when I started going on social media particularly and researching other women with autism that I started to see their posts and see what they were sharing, and I realized, oh my word, I do that too. That's because of my autism. The more that I saw people's other experiences and I connected with other people that were like me, that are lower support women with autism, that also has an ADHD mix, which throws in a whole nother spanner into the works, I started to learn more about myself, and I started to accept myself and realize that a lot of the things that I've struggled with for my whole life was because of my diagnosis. But it also, in having that diagnosis and learning and getting a better understanding around all of this, I started to accept myself and I started to see my strengths. And this is where my journey of embracing my strengths came in. And it's been such a beautiful journey for me to start to love myself the way that I am, but also to know what accommodations I need, because that was also really important for me, to know what to ask for and to know when to ask for the things that I need. It was so empowering for me to understand my rights, to understand the things that I need, and to almost have that courage to stand up and go, I need support, and you have a responsibility to provide that support to me. And I was really blown away by the support that I received in my current workspace, and I'm really grateful for it.
My parents sort of understand, as I was diagnosed as an adult. Certain other family members, they don't understand at all. They say, no, it's a child thing, you must just grow out of it.
The hardest part of my journey, funnily enough, was my family. So I was asked to do a TED Talk a couple of years ago, and I really wanted to share my journey in my TED Talk. So I had to sit down with my family and tell them what I was going to share, because I don't even think they realized to the extent of how hard a lot of the things that I'd been through had been. And my mom turned around to me and she said, but I've tried so hard to make sure you're not disabled. And I said to her, you're right, you have. And I believe that it's because of that that I am where I am today. However, I still have barriers. And I've still had a lot of barriers that I've had to overcome. So you can't cure me. You can't fix me. It's something that I have to live with and that I will live with. But I definitely feel like I know what are the things that I need to do to get the best support.
I mean, I got so startled the one day I ended up chasing someone into a group of managers with my fist in his face, and luckily didn't hit the guy. But I mean, yeah, it's provoked into strong reactions, teased because I'm weird, and I sometimes take things literally. And I mean, I just don't understand people. Or the one place I was at, people would come and stand behind me and breathe heavily because they knew it bothered me.
Sensory overload, or when I have a moment of sensory overload, or like a time period of sensory overload, I really believe the only way that I can explain it is it's like I get struck by lightning. My nervous system shuts down. I can't think, I can't speak. Depending on how bad it is, I shake uncontrollably. I get very cold, which might sound weird, but I'm either really hot or really cold. And then my husband will generally just wrap me in blankets and just hold me tight. It's not fun. Something as simple as you asking me to put together a grocery list can make me just sit down on the floor and cry for hours. Yeah, it's completely disabling.
How does sensory overload affect you and what does it feel like?
Try and explain that one is not easy. The thing is, we're hearing everything at once. I'll just use auditory as the easiest one to explain. I can hear the aeroplane taking off at the moment. I can hear the clicking of the hanger. I can hear the whirlies on the top of the hanger. I can hear the guys with the polishing machine 3 hangers away. At my desk, I can hear 2 or 3 different radio stations simultaneously. Now, naturally, a neurotypical person, the brain automatically filters a lot of those sounds out. I cannot filter any of that out. I am hearing it all at once. My brain is trying to process it all at once. So if you come and talk to me in that situation, even though it's relatively quiet in the hangar, or volume-wise quiet, I will hear the words you are saying, but I won't process a word that you're saying.
What I can compare it to is when you have 90 million applications going on your computer and you keep opening more and you keep clicking on the thing and your computer just freaks out and glitches. It's a lot like that. So basically, I just can't process any more sensory stuff after a specific point. And I get very weird sensations, like my skin starts crawling and my little muscles in my ears vibrate, and I tend to want to curl up. I can't concentrate. I get very agitated and irritable. So yeah, it's being half a step away from a freak out because there's just too much input and not enough capacity to process anymore.
At Autism South Africa, we say autistic person rather than person with autism, so that people can understand that being autistic is an integral part of who that person is. It's the way I think, it's the way I feel, it's the way I experience the world. So you can't separate me and the autism. If you'd want to accept me, then you have to accept the autism as well. So it creates that idea of that autism isn't something that happened that shouldn't have happened, and it's also not something that's going to go away. This person is autistic for the rest of their life, and we have to, again, accept the autism to accept them and know how to support them throughout their lifetime. To me, when people use the term on the spectrum, it's because they're hesitant to say autistic because there are so much stigma around being autistic. Often people want to say this person is autistic, but they're very high functioning. They're barely autistic, and that's not quite how autism works. You're autistic or you're not autistic. Even for something like high functioning or low functioning, we don't use that. We use the idea of high support needs and low support needs, so that we can emphasize that each autistic person do have support needs. So that counts for your autistic people that are in the workplace and have tertiary education. They still have support needs. And often when we talk about high functioning, then people think that this person doesn't need any support. And when we talk about low functioning, then people think this person doesn't have any strengths, where we want to think about a person quite holistically.
A meltdown is basically your system saying, I can't take what's happening anymore. So that, in layman's terms, is basically a freak out. And it can happen in a few ways. It's either bursting into tears, having an extreme fit of rage, sometimes just totally blanking out and not processing anything, just sitting in a corner, rocking somewhere, just trying to regulate myself. What a lot of people don't realize is this isn't a voluntary thing. We're not toddlers throwing tantrums. This isn't something we want to happen. This is a response to extreme stress that we can't control. And it's horribly embarrassing. No one wants to burst into tears or throw their keys at someone or collapse in a corner rocking in front of everyone. It's awful. And the effects last for days because it's exhausting as well. A meltdown is generally in response to a very specific thing, and it's quite temporary. A day or two or three later, you're pretty much good to go. You've mostly recovered. Whereas burnout is consistent stress, consistent pressure, where you actually lose functionality and have to get it back. The mental part of it is very different as well. I was completely depressed. I was suicidal. I was so incredibly anxious. I couldn't function, and I still battle to function with a lot of things. For example, I can't walk into a garage shop. It's just, no. There's just so many things that I used to be able to do that I'm still working towards 6 months later. Yeah. It's a lot more long-term, it's a lot more extreme.
I work a lot with autistic adults, and a big thing we're seeing continuously is autistic burnout. So it takes so much energy to navigate a world that's not made for you. So autistic burnout really comes from those being sensory overwhelmed all of the time, being emotionally overwhelmed all of the time, having to mask and navigate these social interactions all of the time. So a lot of autistic people, they try to hide their autism, they try to push through, they want to work, so they're really trying to put in all of the effort into their work, and then they burn out, and then they're really not able for a certain period of time to be as productive as they potentially can be. So if we want autistic people to work to their fullest potential, these accommodations are really important. It's good for the employer as well, because if you accommodate your autistic person, they're going to thrive. They're going to be able to bring those skills to the workplace.
A big thing is a lot of people talk about autism awareness. Autism awareness is passive. I'm aware that you're autistic. It means nothing until you start saying, okay, we're aware you're autistic, but how can we accommodate?
And I think autistic people are very beneficial to have in the workplace, because autistic people have specific skills often, not always, but we can be really good with our memory, we can be good with analyzing, with pattern recognition, but also we just think differently and we experience the world differently. So we can come at problems from angles that nobody else is considering.
If there's one thing that I want people to know, it's that people with autism are people first. We deserve to be treated like anybody else, and we deserve to have our rights afforded to us on an equal basis.
Autism is a real thing. It's probably not anything you've heard because there is so much misinformation out there. There's so much stigma. We are called disordered, we are called disabled. But we're just people with slightly different social and sensory needs. It's a real thing. Our challenges are real, our issues are real, but we just want to get by like anyone else. Because people don't believe it's a real thing. Never mind that you've got acronyms up the wazoo and diagnoses and medical professionals saying like, hey, this person has this thing.
Autistic people are here. We live in the society, we're here. Either we can be included and the society can benefit from diversity and different minds, or we can keep on ignoring autistic people because it's an invisible disability, think that somebody's a little bit eccentric, a little bit quirky, a little bit difficult to work with, and really miss out on human diversity as a whole.
Remember him?
Hi.
The reason his story is so familiar to me, and I know the struggle so well, is because I'm married to him. And that is what sparked an interest in digging deeper into this topic. I really do hope that when employers see this and when they get to know a little bit more about the positive attributes that their autistic employees have and that they can bring to the workplace, that they will be more than willing to be accommodating to them. One last thought. Ask. Talk to your autistic employees. And here's the challenge. Really listen. Be willing to suspend your preconceived ideas. It has been proven that autistic employees can be more productive than neurotypical employees when they properly match to their job and when their needs are supported. This is just one of the many reasons to create the right conditions for them to thrive.